All right, let's talk about turning all that cool tech in your classroom from just another tool into a real teaching partner. Today, we're diving into a framework called the TGEM model. And honestly, it's all about creating those deep, meaningful aha moments for your students.
Does this question hit a little too close to home? Come on, we've all been there. You see your students dutifully going through the motions on some educational app, but you're left wondering, is any of this actually sticking? This whole clicking without thinking thing is a real challenge for all of us.
And this isn't just a feeling we have. Researcher Samia Khan really hit the nail on the head with this quote. The tech itself, it's not a magic wand. It's how we, the teachers, guide our students to use it that makes all the difference. So, what's a better way to do that?
Well, that brings us to the TGEM framework. And listen, this is not another app you have to download or some new software you have to learn. Just think of it as a teaching strategy, a fresh approach that makes the technology you already use way more effective.
So, what on earth is TGM? It stands for Technology Supported Generate, Evaluate, and Modify. At its heart, it's a cycle. First, students generate their own ideas about a topic. Then they use technology to evaluate those ideas against actual evidence. And finally, they modify their own understanding based on what they just discovered. And the key phrase here really is teacher-guided. You're the coach, the facilitator for this whole journey.
So, the whole model really boils down to this super simple but incredibly powerful three-step cycle: generate, evaluate, and modify. And it's a loop. Students might go back and forth between evaluating and modifying a few times until they build a really solid scientific understanding. So let's break down each step.
Okay, so we kick things off with phase 1, generate. Now the goal here is not to get the right answer right away. Not at all. It's about making our students' current thinking visible. We want to get all their initial ideas, their theories, and even their misconceptions out in the open so we can actually work with them.
And here is a perfect example of what that looks like in action. In this picture, students are using a free tool called CMAP Tools to build a concept map about global warming. They're just connecting the dots between things like sun, earth, and greenhouse gases based on what they think they already know. This becomes the starting point for their whole investigation. All right, so once we have those initial ideas all mapped out, it's time to put them to the test. And that brings us to phase 2, evaluate. This is where technology really shines, because it becomes this amazing tool for helping students confront the very misconceptions we just uncovered. So, let's say that in those concept maps, a pretty common idea popped up, that clouds are kind of like a blanket. So if you add more clouds, the Earth is going to get hotter. I mean, it sounds perfectly logical, right? But it's not the full scientific picture. The big question is, how do we test that idea?
We test it with a simulation. What you're seeing here is a free tool called NetLogo, running a climate change model. It's awesome because it lets students actually play with the variables. They can change CO2 levels, sun brightness, and, most importantly for our test, they can add more clouds and see what happens to the global temperature in real time.
And this right here is where the magic happens, that aha moment. On the left, you've got the student's prediction. More clouds means a higher temperature. But on the right, you see what the simulation actually shows. When they add more clouds, they see the sun's photons start reflecting off them, and the temperature actually levels off or maybe even cools down a bit. The evidence just completely flips their initial belief on its head. And that is the core of real learning.
So that amazing discovery leads us right into the final, and maybe most important, phase, modify. This is where students have to square what they thought they knew with the new evidence they just saw with their own eyes. It's where the learning really gets cemented.
So, they go right back to those initial concept maps they made. And now, they can fix the connections, they can add new info, they can totally refine their models. They might change that line between clouds and temperature to show the cooling effect they just witnessed. The whole process makes their learning journey something they can actually see and touch.
So why go through all this trouble? Why is this cycle so much more effective than, just telling students the facts from the get-go? It's because TGEM pushes students way beyond simple memorization and gets them into the world of real scientific thinking. The power here is just huge, for a couple of really big reasons. First, it leads to real, genuine conceptual change because students have to argue with the evidence themselves, not just with the teacher. Second, it uses tech to make invisible things, like energy from the sun, totally visible and interactive.
It also builds those critical thinking skills, predicting, testing, revising, that are so much more important than just facts. And finally, as students are debating and explaining what they found, they're naturally getting better at using academic language. It's a win-win-win.
So I want to leave you with this question. Think about your own classroom, your own curriculum. Think about those abstract concepts, the ones that students seem to struggle with year after year. What's that one big idea that this generate, evaluate, and modify cycle could completely transform for your students?